Hey guys, today's tutorial is going to be over this Foxy Eye bridal makeup. I've seen this trend going around for quite some time and I've recently been really getting into it as far as my bridal makeup looks. I first like to prep the skin before I do any other step, just so everything lays really smoothly on top of it, all the products have time to absorb in the skin, then I move on to the eyes afterwards. I started off with the Charlotte Tilbury Glow Toner. I always like to prep the skin with a toner first. This just removes any excess makeup if the client has it on, any excess oils, and then it also tones and balances out the pH level of the skin as well. The Charlotte Tilbury one specifically does provide a lot of moisture to the skin and also does provide a subtle glow. This client in particular did have a little bit drier skin, which led to a few dry patches, so I wanted to go ahead and prep her accurately for the skin type that she had at the time. I went in with the Sonia Roselli Water Elixir. It's described as a serum and a liquid moisturizer in one, which I feel like would accurately describe it. It's almost a water inside of your hands. It's just really fluid. I love using this as a prep step for my clients. I usually don't like to apply things with my hands. I would rather do it with a brush just to maintain 100% hygienic procedures. I also want to note that the better skincare that you have beforehand, the better the makeup's going to turn out. So that's why I really like to take time to prep the skin accurately. I did feel like this client in particular needed a little bit more moisture, so I went in with the Belief Aqua Bomb. This is a lightweight gel moisturizer and it lays perfectly underneath makeup. Not a lot of moisturizers combine really well with foundations, and this is one of the few ones that almost creates a grip to it. I always get the question of whether I apply a moisturizer every single time to people, and sometimes I do and sometimes I don't, depending on if I feel a person needs it or not. Now I'm going to let all the skincare sink in while I work on the actual makeup. I'm first going in with the brows. I'm filling it in with the NYX Micro Brow Pencil in the shade Espresso. I didn't want to go really dark because otherwise you would get kind of a Sharpie brow effect. As you can see me doing, I started at the front of the brow and flick them upwards to kind of mimic the direction that the hairs are already going. This makes the brows appear a little bit more natural, and then as I'm going down the brows, I'm just going to be mimicking the direction of the hairs. I do like to have a more defined tail, so I will usually work on crisping up that a little bit more than the rest of it, and then I'm just using the spoolie end to brush it out a little bit. The next thing I'm doing is going in with an eyeshadow primer. I just recently discovered the Beauty Bay eye bases. They're pretty similar to the P. Louise bases, except for they just aren't so thick, which is making them a lot easier to work with. I personally love using tinted eye bases that have a little bit of color to them that match skin tones, so they cancel out any discoloration or veins on the eyelids, and this also makes eyeshadow colors go on a lot more pigmented since you have some sort of color base. I usually take my eye bases on a concealer brush and carve right up underneath the eyebrows to kind of create a shape underneath. This technique also does clean up the appearance of any stray hairs if somebody hasn't plucked their eyebrows. Next, I'm going in with a completely clean eyeshadow brush and just blending all over where I put down the eyeshadow primer. This will remove any excess product or any patches that may not have been blended out to begin with. This will make sure that your eyeshadows blend really smoothly on top. Next, I'm taking the Viseart Neutral Matte eyeshadow palette, and that is the entire palette that I'm going to be working with today. I decided to use a light tan shade inside of that palette. As I'm going here, you'll see that I'm concentrating right on the outer corners and working on kind of diffusing it outwards a little bit to kind of start creating that elongated foxy cat eye sort of shape. Next, I'm going in with a more tapered sort of brush, and this will really create the shape of it. I went in with the very darkest brown inside of that palette and started diffusing it out a little bit, and all I'm doing is just blending and blending and blending and blending. If you can see, there is quite a bit of fallout that happened underneath her eyes, and that's the exact reason why I do eyes first. I always feel like it's a little bit easier to do eyes first, as you won't be disrupting or having to remove any face makeup. Waste a lot of time if you put foundation on first, have to wipe it away, and then have to redo the foundation afterwards. I'm still blending here, just going back and forth just to make sure that my symmetry is even. Eyeshadows in general are pretty forgiving, so just go back and forth between the two brushes with those colors on them, and when in doubt, just blend it out. Next, I'm going in with the same shade, but I'm just taking it on a concentrated pencil brush. This is going to ensure that I get the most opacity that I possibly can out of the shade. It almost looks like it's a black, but it's really not. I'm putting this right on the outer corner and then using that tapered brush to diffuse it out a little bit. I just wanted a little bit more depth near the lash line, and I'm creating almost like a smoky wing kind of effect. And as you can see on the other side, I'm just dragging it out and just kind of creating that shape. Again, there's a lot of back and forth that's going to go on with your makeup looks, but you just got to have a lot of patience. Sometimes things look like a hot mess before they start wrapping themselves up, so just don't give up, keep going. The next thing I'm doing is going in with a light cream shade inside of that palette and just going in with a flat definer brush, packing it on right on the lids. I decided to keep this look primarily all matte except for the shimmer in the inner corners. I feel like this creates more of an elegant style look, and I've been loving matte looks on my brides recently. Somewhere here, my camera did end up dying on me, so all you missed is just me applying the Inglot 77 gel liner, which is the black gel liner. I put it straight across on the lash line with an angled liner brush, and that's the only thing that you guys really missed. Next, I'm applying the L'Oreal Lash Paradise Waterproof Mascara with a disposable spoolie. As you can tell, I'm using my finger kind of as a guard, so I'm placing my pinky right on the lid of the client, so if any mascara happens to get on there, it'll touch my pinky instead of getting in their eyelid. You can also use your pinky to lift up the client's eyelid as well, so you can have easier access to the lashes. Just little tips and tricks I picked up along the way, and you'll kind of learn the same as you gain more experience doing makeup applications on people, but just wanted to share things along the way. If you guys have any other ones to comment, then definitely go ahead and comment those below. I love learning different tricks from other artists. Next, you'll see me measuring the false lashes to the client's real ones. You always want to start on the inner corner and have the excess be on the outer corner. Always trim from the outside. I went ahead and applied the Kiss Lash Glue to the Ardell lashes that I'm using off camera. And instead of me just wasting time by shaking the lashes and just standing there and doing nothing, I went ahead and set the lashes down. And I like to take this time to foundation match my client. Seconds add up into minutes, and you never want to stand around doing nothing during a makeup application. I know I already went way past this, but all I'm doing now is applying the foundation. I used the NARS Natural Radiant Foundation. I combined the shades Tahoe and Santa Fe to get her correct shade. I always like to match the client's neck and their body as opposed to their face, just because some people do self-tan before wedding days. I could tell that her face was about 2 shades lighter than her body, so I wanted to go ahead and match it up really well. I do apply my foundation with a concealer brush, the same one that I used for the eyeshadow primer. I draw it on in certain areas, and then I use a damp disposable sponge to go ahead and blend out the product. I just feel like this method helps you concentrate in certain areas, adjust the coverage if need be, and then the sponge helps diffuse it out so it doesn't look so heavy. I let the lash glue get tacky for about 60 seconds. I usually have my clients look down, but without closing their eyes all the way, and that's exactly what I instruct them to do. This not only gives you a better view of where the lash is actually sitting, but it'll prevent the lashes from being stuck to the bottom lashes, and in turn, not gluing your client's eyes together. I use the Ardell Naked 421 lashes. I use a lash applicator to apply them, sticking them in on the middle first and then applying them to the inner and outer corner, and then afterwards I'm using my fingers to press them in a little bit further and pushing them up so they're a little bit more comfortable. And then here you saw me just asking my client if they felt okay or if anything was poking her. She said no, so I was good to go. Now I'm continuing to apply the foundation on her face. I also forgot to tell you guys that the NARS Natural Radiant Foundation is my medium to full coverage foundation. It has a satin finish to it, which means that it's not super dewy and it's not super matte. It just is right in between. I only carry satin finish foundations for this reason, just because you can alter them depending on what prep steps that you use and then what finishing powders that you use on top. If somebody has a more dry skin like my client here, I use more hydrating products such as serums and moisturizers, and then I'll set them with less powder. If they tell me that they're a little bit more oily, then I will go ahead and set them with a more mattifying primer and set them better with powder. This is why I don't feel like you really need all the 3 finishes of the foundations. Otherwise, that's like way too many foundations that you'll carry in your kit. I do highly recommend that you only carry the satin finish foundations. I love having products like this that you can use multiple different ways, and this also cuts the amount of products that you have to carry with you, so just keep in mind whenever you're picking out products for your kit, try to make them as versatile as possible. I know everybody always wants to have every single product underneath the sun because they never know what kind of client is going to sit in their chair and what their preferences are, but by no means is this me trying to skimp on products and not having things for the client. It's just more so being able to adapt your artistry skills to get the results that you want. I always say that a great artist is not only defined by the skill set that they have, but also the knowledge that they have to work with minimal amount of products and also manipulate those products to get the results that they want. A great artist can make whatever products work for them. They can even be from the dollar store and make those look like high-end products. It all just depends how you use them and how much you practice. I'm just continuing to draw on the foundation with that concealer brush and then using my damp sponge to blend it out. I do get these damp sponges, by the way, from CVS. They're the One and Other brand. They're made with hyaluronic acid and they are the jumbo wedge sponges, so they're a little bit softer and kind of more so act like beauty blenders on the skin, so they blend out really seamlessly but don't absorb too much product. Next, I'm taking that same concealer brush and using the Too Faced multi-use concealer in the shade Light Beige. I like to go with concealer colors that are about maybe 1 shade lighter than the person's complexion. I'm not a big fan of the super white, bright, highlighted under eye look just because I feel like it doesn't look very natural. Of course, I will do it upon client request, but normally people kind of just let me do whatever, and I love making things full coverage, but not looking like they're heavy or cakey. I want everything to blend into the skin very naturally and not look like it's just sitting there. So I'll go ahead and draw it down the center of the face, right on the forehead, down the nose, Cupid's bow, sides of the nose where we get redness, and then on the chin as well. Then the last step is drawing those upside down triangles right underneath the eye and then blending that out as well. I do want you guys to take note, especially if you are a beginner makeup artist and you haven't had much experience doing makeup on clients. I usually have my clients look up directly when I'm applying things underneath their eyes, so maybe eyeshadow underneath the eyes, eyeliner, or concealer as well. I just feel like this makes a little bit more of a comfortable experience for clients instead of them looking like straight forward or down or something. But some people do have very, very sensitive eyes, so you have to probably count about like 1 or 2 Mississippis in your head and then pull away for a little bit to let your clients blink. Some people are more sensitive than other ones and you might have to give them more of a break. Just kind of consciously be aware while you're doing this and blending up underneath the eyes. If a client's eyes start watering, you might want to give them a break. Makeup artists need to have multiple different talents other than just their skill set, and one of those hidden talents is being able to read people's body language, just so you know when to give your clients a break, when they're uncomfortable, etc. This does have to do with how much pressure that you're putting on a client and how heavy-handed you are. As you can see, I'm lightly pressing in every single movement that I have and I'm not exerting very much effort, so that's going to make all the difference as far as your client's comfortability. Now I'm just taking a denser angled foundation brush and I'm using the Patrick Ta Cream and Powder Contour Duo in the shade She Sculpted. He only has 3 shades, so this is the medium shade. I felt like this really suited her skin tone. I'm going in with the cream side. I just feel like that's a very nice tone for her skin, and I'm going in and just applying it in the contours of her face. Now this is a true contour. There is a difference between contour and bronzer. Contour is meant to redefine the shape or change the shape a little bit of a face. So with the contour that I'm using now, I'm trying to make her face a little bit slimmer. I'm going right up underneath her cheekbones in order to make them seem a little bit slimmer when you look straight on. I'm also making her forehead seem a little bit smaller too by blending up into the hairline and then adding some to the temples as well. I'm also using a little bit on the sides of the nose to make it a little bit slimmer, and that is pretty much what we're doing here. And then the bronzer is mainly meant to warm up the face and meant to bronze the areas of the face that you would naturally get hit by the sun. I personally just think that going in with creams, whether it be contour or an actual cream bronzer, makes or breaks a look. It just makes it look a lot more seamless and you can blend it out a lot better. Everything just kind of looks a little bit more natural that way. So I go ahead and apply a cream first and then set it with a bronzer later. Now I'm just taking a liquid blush, which is the Soft Pinch Liquid Blush by Rare Beauty in the shade Believe. It's just a deeper mauve sort of tone, and I'm taking it with that same brush. I like to layer my blushes right on top of the contour just so it seamlessly fuses into each other. Next thing I'm doing is going in with the Patrick Star One Size Translucent Powder. The way that you can get a very seamless look underneath the eyes without it looking too heavy or too dry underneath is by using a damp sponge. The other secret for preventing the under eyes from looking too dry is to get them out of all the creases underneath the eye first. This is why you see me going in with my ring finger, tapping out the excess product that might have settled there from the concealer, and then going in with the powder afterwards. If you don't do this step, all you're going to be doing is setting the liquid concealer in the crease. In turn, this creates the look of more wrinkles underneath the eye, which can definitely age you by at least 20 years. So make sure you get out all of the concealer from the creases first. Then, as I mentioned, just having that damp sponge put on the powder, I feel like it provides a lot more moisture rather than just going in with a brush that has no moisture to it whatsoever. As you can tell, I'm not baking with the powder. I'm not letting it sit there for too long. I'm just applying the powder with the sponge and then blending it all the way into the skin so it absorbs all the way. I also prefer not to set the whole entire face with powder, as it can make it look a little bit too matte. I still want to retain the skin's moisture and the dewiness of it, so I only set the center of the face. I am going to be setting the face with powder bronzer and powder blush on top. Between that and also the setting spray at the very end, I feel like that sets the rest of the face well enough, and I haven't had a problem with the client's makeup rubbing off. I just took a tissue and folded it twice, and in putting it right up underneath the eye, this is going to prevent any fallout from happening. Any fallout that happens is going to fall in the tissue instead of falling on the client's face, pretty much mimicking the same colors that I used on the top on the bottom with that same Viseart palette that I'm using earlier. I'm taking a smaller pencil brush just to define a little bit underneath the eye. I prefer to use a dark brown eyeshadow instead of using an eyeliner. It prevents anything from smudging underneath, and it also is a little bit more waterproof. Besides just using that pencil brush to smudge, I'm also taking a really thin angled liner brush and stamping up underneath right near the lash line. This is going to create that eyeliner effect without actually trying to get in the waterline or irritate a client's eyes. I'm also using stamping pressing motions for this. These stamping motions are going to be a little bit more comfortable for people, especially if they have more sensitive eyes, rather than you swiping. This client in particular did not have sensitive eyes whatsoever, so I wasn't as concerned with it. I had done her makeup previously, as she was one one of my October brides last year. However, if you have never done this client's makeup before, which most likely you probably have not, then I would err on the side of caution and just make sure you are giving your clients enough of a break just to make sure they have enough time to blink and their eyes don't water. The last thing that you want is tear streaks running down your beautifully done face makeup. So yeah, just be aware of that whenever you're doing a person's makeup. Next thing I'm doing is taking the waterproof mascara and just coating her bottom lashes with a disposable spoolie. Sometimes if somebody has really small bottom lashes like I do, I'll go ahead and use a brow spoolie instead because it's a little bit smaller and more tapered. Next I'm going into the powder bronzer. I'm taking the Huda Beauty Glowish bronzer in the shade Tan Light, and again, this is to warm up the face, not necessarily to contour it out. I am, however, placing it right on top of the contours just so it's not super high up on her face. And as you can see, I'm blending upwards. If you drag downwards, you'll drag down the whole entire face, and I want to lift the face instead of drag it down. I love this bronzer not only for the color ranges, but also because of the fact that it's not a flat matte bronzer. It does have dimension in it. If you guys open the packaging, it's almost a marbleized kind of looking bronzer. It has a lot of color dimension inside of it, and it does have a little bit of a glow to it, which means that it will naturally blend in and make the skin look a little bit more glowy and hydrated. My camera, again, somewhere along the line cut off, so I went ahead and applied the NARS blush on top. It was part of the holiday collection from last year, and then I also went on top with the Dior Backstage Glow highlighting face powder in the shade 001 Universal, and highlighted the top of her cheekbones, on the temples, and right down the center of the face, on the nose, cupid bow, and chin. And then I also used the same highlighter for the inner corner highlight that she has as well. Now onto the lips, which I've obviously been working on for a little bit. I took the Urban Decay lip liner in the shade Conspiracy. It's a mid-tone brown / mauve lip liner. It's really nice on about tan to deep skin tones. I really love the tone of it. It's nice and neutral, which means that it blends in with a lot of lipsticks really well. There's really no secret for lip lining. I just line around the lips. I don't really overline unless I'm asked. I wanted to do more of an ombre lip style on her, so I'm using that darker lip liner, starting to fade it in, and then I'll put a lighter color in the middle. As you can tell, I'm using my finger every once in a while to kind of fade it in a little bit more, just so it's as seamless as possible. Not a lot of clients ask me for a look like this, but I've recently been liking them a little bit, and I wanted to experiment to see if I really liked this look, and I and the client absolutely loved it. She even wishes that she would have done something like that on her actual wedding day. She did a solid mid-tone wine kind of color, which absolutely was beautiful for an October wedding and suited her really well. But yeah, we both like this look a lot. Then next, I'm using a combination of colors. I'm using Merit Beauty in the shade Slip, and the Sephora's Lip Stories lipstick in the shade 3, which is We, and 7, which is Love Love. You guys always ask me on here and also on my Instagram page of what lipsticks I have in my bridal clients. You guys always really love the nude shades that I create for them, and I want to tell you guys right now that I rarely ever use one singular lipstick shade, so it's really hard to tell you guys what exactly I use, unless I write it down, of course, like I did for this. Otherwise than that, I kind of just think right on the spot, and I mix a whole bunch of shades, like up to like 5 or 6 colors sometimes, to get the exact shade that I need for the client. I'll alter it either to the client's skin tone or their personal preferences, but since this was a model call, I just got free reign to do whatever, and I ended up picking a neutral mauve / brown sort of tone. Now you see me just going back in with the lip liner to fade it in and darken up the lip liner a little bit more. I'm just the worst sometimes at ombre lips because I want it to be ombre, but I also am struggling with the fact that it isn't blended in. So yeah, it's just a really hard technique to master sometimes, and I'm still working on it. So that's why I used this session to practice a little bit more. Once I got to the point that I was happy, I went ahead and used the Lancome Juicy Tubes in just the clear shade. It doesn't have any color and it's a little bit plumping. I went in with the same lip brush that I'd been using for the lipstick and put it right over top. It just gives a really glossy kind of sheen to it. I feel like all ombre lips should honestly have a lip gloss on top just because it makes them blend a little bit better and overall just completes the look. I'm also using the gloss to shape the lips a little bit more. There was some lip liner areas where they were a little bit crooked, so I went ahead and used the gloss to kind of straighten them out a little bit. And then the last thing I'm doing is just using the Skindinavia Bridal Makeup Setting Spray to lock everything into place. Also, just a tip, make sure you count for the client like 1 to 3 before you actually spray the product. It kind of gives them a heads up so they don't get startled by it. I naturally am in the habit of just fanning off the client's face with my hands, and I keep forgetting that I actually do have the Patrick Ta fan, so I went ahead and used that instead, and obviously that worked a lot better, and then my client and I were laughing about it. And then that ends the tutorial. I hope you guys really enjoyed. If you did, go ahead and give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.